Hello and welcome to Text Talk for today. I am Dr. Roosevelt Watson Jr. And first, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in and sharing some of your time with me as we seek to revisit these scriptures and reiterate their relevance to us in our times and looking afresh at the revelation found therein. It would mean so very much to me if you would subscribe to this channel so that we could continue to share presentations such as these. There is a lesson provided us by Faith Pathway Bible Studies and published by the Sunday School Publishing Board entitled When Love is Lost, taken from Genesis 37. That is the Sunday school lesson for many of a church Sunday school curriculum or ministry for September the 6th. Well, we know that the book of Genesis is the first book of the Hebrew Bible and of the Christian Old Testament. It gives an account of the creation of the world, the early history of humanity, and the ancestral history of those who would become known as the Jewish people. The lesson before us features Jacob, whose name has been changed to Israel, and his sons born to him of his two wives, Leah and Rachel, and their maids, Zilpah and Bilhah. These boys would become the patriarchs of what we come to know as the 12 tribes of Israel. So let me take a moment to read the lesson text just so we can dive into it more efficiently and effectively. Genesis chapter 37, I'm going to read beginning at verse number 2. It says, "This is the account of Jacob's family line." I'm reading from the New International Version. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. King James calls it a coat of many colors. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brother said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now I want to skip to verse number 23. "So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern or pit." And then verse 28, "So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt." All right, that's the text that we're going to focus on as we talk about when love is lost. Now, as we examine this lesson text in light of that lesson theme, we observe three major things that I want to highlight and then kind of go from there. I see what we call parental preference. I see sibling stoking, and I see brotherly backlash. So when it comes to parental preference, note that Israel or Jacob, he loved his 11th son, Joseph, more than all his children because, as the text says, he is the son of his old age. Joseph was daddy's pet. He was Israel's pride and joy. And Israel made this perfectly clear. He made no bones about it by making Joseph a coat of many colors, this distinctive long tunic, this beautiful ornate robe. It suggested to his siblings that young Joseph had assumed a posture and position of leadership over them. Joseph in this coat gave the air of him not being on their level, but on a level above them and looking down on them. Accordingly, Joseph did not seem to do the same work that his brothers did. He did not keep herds the flocks like his brothers, and in fact, neither was the coat suitable for any manual labor of that sort. Instead, at their daddy's direction, Joseph would go see about them and bring the report back to his daddy of what his brothers were doing. So because of this, because of Israel's favoritism, because he made it clear that Joseph was his pride and joy, Joseph's brothers hated him. Just picture that. Brothers hating brother. They detested him. They couldn't stand him. He made them sick, so much so that they could not speak peaceably to him. They couldn't say a kind word to him. They couldn't talk nice to him. It pained them to have to say anything to Joseph. So as you can tell, this is more than just a case of sibling rivalry. There was a great divide in the house. There was a major tension in the family. Brothers who are harboring hate for their brother. So their love was lost. They had no love for their brother. They had the same daddy, but they had no love for their brother. And daddy is the cause for this situation being so. I have brothers, and we've had our differences and we've had our fights, but I have never concluded or resigned to the thought that I hated them. No. So there is parental preference, but there's also sibling stoking. Now, Joseph knew, he had to know how his brothers felt. He knew how he more than got on their nerves. But yet Joseph made matters worse. He had a couple of dreams that coincided with his apparent leadership and favored status in the family, and he shared those dreams with his brothers, and these dreams were interpreted as him ruling over them, and even over his father, and you can tell from the reading of the text that didn't go over well at all. His brothers hated him the more. They already hated just the position of favor. They already hated because his daddy gave him the coat of many colors, or this ornate robe, but then they hated him all the more for him sharing the dreams that he shared. And so from the brothers' perspective, Joseph's parading around in his fancy coat and his predictions of their falling down on their knees before him was a mocking that they could not manage. It was a teasing that they could not take. And I don't know if it was Joseph's ignorance or if he was intentionally sharing these dreams to flaunt his favored status. In any case, it was unwise. In any case, he stoked the fires of his brother's hatred. He wittingly or unwittingly taunted them. He poked the bear, if you will, and that should not have been the case. Well, there's parental preference, there's sibling stoking, and then there is brotherly backlash. One day, as Joseph came in, and you take time to read all of Genesis chapter 37 to get all of the story. But one day, as Joseph came to check on his brothers at the direction of his daddy, they decided to kill him. And only Reuben was against killing him. So instead, they threw him in this cistern or this pit and just left him there. But then when some Midianite and Ishmaelite merchants came by, Judah suggested that they sell Joseph to the merchants. Instead of killing him, let's sell him to the merchants and get rid of him, get him out of our presence, get him out of our hair. And that's what they did that for 20 pieces of silver. So Joseph now is carried away into Egypt, and they fabricated this story that a wild animal got him and killed him, and they brought the coat, that the robe, and had dipped it in some blood, sheep blood, and had daddy thinking that Joseph had been killed. But this was their retaliation. This was their revenge. Their hatred was so strong that they had to get rid of their brother. So that's the historical synopsis of this account, but in this happening with Joseph. But what's in it for us now? What do we get out of this? What does this mean for us in these days and times? Well, looking at this text with Christocentric lens, or with Christ as the focal point, there are several observations to be made concerning, number one, God's providence, and number two, Christian pedagogy, or the foreseeing care and guidance of God, and the established teachings of the New Testament church regarding Christian character and conduct. When it comes to God's providence, there's several things that we see. Number one, we see the unfolding of the plan and promise of God made to Abram to make of him a great nation. This nation was to be a blessing to all the world, the entire world, and it is really epitomized in the coming of Jesus Christ into the world to give himself for the world. Jesus would come through the lineage of the Jews, the Son of God, to bring salvation to the world. Number two, when you follow this historical account from Abram to Isaac, and from Isaac to Jacob, and to Jacob's sons, it doesn't take long for us to see that God uses plain, ordinary people who are not of any royal pedigree, people who are not perfect, people who indeed have problems. And that's a good place to just pause and give God thanks for that. God uses regular people. If God had to wait on perfect people in order to use them, there would no people be used by God. Somebody said God hits straight licks with crooked sticks, and I say that God incorporates the will of men, the ways of the world, and even the works of the devil, and still gets his plan done. So it is, when you talk about the providence of God, and God working his plan using men. He uses regular flawed men. So don't let the devil or anybody fool you into believing that God can't use you. Yes, he can. You are here because he really got you fit some kind of way into God's scheme of things. Oh my. Another thing that we see when it comes to God's providence, Joseph's dreams, those dreams that he had and he shared with his brothers, they are epiphanies, or they at least divine hints from God concerning how he fits in God's plans concerning the nation of Israel, and even the coming of Christ. Joseph would end up saving the beginnings of this young nation, because really it's just now Jacob or Israel and his sons. So and God has promised to make of them a great nation, and so they're not nation size yet. But Joseph plays a pivotal part in protecting and sustaining this nation, excuse me, before it gets nation size. Another thing about the providence and plan of God, you can't, and we see this very clear with Joseph, you can't tell everything to everybody. Even when that thing is good and it's been given to you by God, even when you are wanting to share it with those with whom you are in close relationship, those who you would think would normally praise you and support you for this thing that you share. You can't share everything with everybody. Some things that God gives you are for your information and are not for publication. Oh my, y'all. When it comes to Christian character and conduct, you'll always, when you observe folk, you always glean two things. We always get two things from watching people: what to do and what not to do, and both are equally important observations. In Genesis chapter 37, we see from Israel or Jacob, we see from Joseph, and we see from the other brothers. We see what not to do. This chapter is loaded with don't do that. In the New Testament, we find teachings concerning the Christian home and the relationships, how they should be therein. And with that teaching in mind, we understand that Israel or Jacob should not have exhibited the kind of parental preference or favoritism that he did. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, in the modern English version, the Apostle Paul writes, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." In other words, parents should not impose arbitrary, needless, unsympathetic, unreasonable, or severe rule over their children that they might be filled with bitterness and anger. Israel's parental preference was certainly not diabolical, but it should not ever been practiced like that. It was the weight that led to the sin of Joseph's older brothers. We are to bring them up in such a way that it reflects our reverence for God. That's number two. The manner in which we rear our children should reflect our reverence for God, teaching them also how to revere God. And by the demonstration of the love, number three, of the love that God showed for us with the giving of his son, and from the teachings of Jesus concerning love, we discern that even when the instinctive affection for family or family love, if you will, or in the Greek it's called storge. Even when this instinctive affection for family is strained beyond its limits, the love of God, or the God kind of love, the agape in us, should cause us to forgive and not find fault. It should move us to reconcile and not retaliate. And so we should always love and not hate. We should never, we might hate some happenings, we might hate some things, but we should never hate folk. And right in here, I need to just stick just a little as a side note of all the stuff that's going on in our society, with some crazy politicians, with some unkind, racist, if you will, practices and inhumane brutality. The challenge for Christians, those who follow God, who God's children by way of their faith in Jesus, the challenge for us is to not allow these things to cause us to hate people. That's, I don't know what that does to you, but the challenge for us is to not be moved to hate them. Yes, we hate the things that are happening, but we are challenged by the love of God that we say we have to not hate them. And we probably going to discover, like we already know, that we need some work on us too. We need God to do a work on us as well. The other thing that I see when it comes to Christian character and conduct, whether we're talking about natural family or a Christian family, the sin is not in not loving folk equally, but it is in loving them uniquely. That we should not seek to love folk equally, but we should seek to love them uniquely. Let me say it right. Everybody's different, so we should not attempt to dish out same measure of love to everybody. No, everybody's different. We have our different relationships with different members of the family and all that. And it's the problem is not loving them equally. No, we should never seek to love them equally. We should seek to love them uniquely. That's what we gather from this. We see nothing of how the daddy, Israel, Jacob, in this story, what he does to share with his other sons. We see nothing of how he nurtures the relationship with those other boys, but we do see what he does with and for Joseph. So the issue is never about loving folk equally, but it is about loving everybody uniquely. So such that there is no rivalry, if you will. There is no one seeming to get more and another one getting less of the love. God loves all of us uniquely, and he loves us uninhibited. He loves us all uninhibitedly and completely, sacrificially. But he does not love all of us the same. He loves us uniquely. Oh my! And what a mighty God we serve. What a wonderful, awesome God that we have. So it should never be this situation in at least in this family, in Joseph's family, in Jacob's, in that household. We talk about when love is lost. That situation should not have never occurred. But that leaves me, and I'm closing. But that leaves me this question that I want to pose to you to ponder after we've gone off the air. The question is this, and and I want you to hit me up at my email at rwministries, the number 17 at gmail.com. That's rwministries, the number 17 at gmail.com, and tell me what you think about this question to ponder. Should it ever be that love is lost? Yeah, that's the question to ponder. Should it ever be? That situation in Joseph's family shouldn't happen. In Jacob's household shouldn't have happened. But should it ever be that love is lost? Hit me up and tell me what you think at rwministries17 at gmail.com. I'll certainly respond to you. Maybe even talk about it the next time we're on. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please go and hit the subscribe button. We are just getting started, just getting our feet wet. Got some more stuff to talk about. We're gonna get this thing rolling better and better. So thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you. Until next time, Doc Watt is out.